You have been sitting across from people your entire life, and they have been handing you the answer key to every interaction, and you have been ignoring it. Every single person you have ever dealt with, every boss, every partner, every friend, every rival, has been telling you exactly who they are and exactly what they want. The problem was never that they were hiding it. The problem was that you were too busy talking to notice. Your mouth was moving, your ego was performing, and their body was screaming the truth while you stared at their face and believed the lie. That stops today. Not next week. Not when you feel ready. Today. Because the people who win in this world are not the ones who talk the most. They are the ones who read the deepest. Machiavelli understood something that most people still refuse to accept. He understood that human beings are transparent if you know where to look. The mouth lies. The face performs. But the body cannot help itself. There is a part of the human brain called the limbic system, and it evolved over millions of years to keep you alive. It governs your survival responses. Freeze, flight, fight. And here is the critical thing. The limbic brain does not ask for permission. It does not consult your conscious mind. It reacts. Instantly. Automatically. And those reactions leak out through your body in ways you cannot control because you do not even know they are happening. The conscious brain, the neocortex, that is the liar. That is the part that crafts narratives, builds excuses, constructs elaborate explanations for why things happened. The neocortex is the politician. The limbic system is the truth teller. And when you learn to read the limbic system through the body, you gain access to a channel of information that the person in front of you does not even know they are broadcasting. Think about what that means. Every conversation becomes an open book. Every negotiation becomes a rigged game in your favor. Every relationship becomes transparent. You stop guessing. You stop hoping. You stop trusting words and start reading signals. And once you make that shift, you become dangerous. Not in a way that people fear. In a way that people cannot quite name. They will feel that you see through them. They will feel exposed around you without understanding why. And that feeling, that quiet unease, that is power. So here are 7 dark techniques for reading the truth that people are desperate to conceal. Each one takes something they are already giving you and turns it into a weapon of perception. The mouth always lies. The body always confesses. And after today, you will never miss the confession again. 1. Read from the feet up, never from the face down. This is the single most important rule of reading people, and almost nobody knows it. When you watch someone, where do you look? You look at their face. Everyone does. It is instinctive. And that is exactly why the face is the least honest part of the body. Think about it. From the moment you were born, you have been practicing your facial expressions. You learned to smile when you were supposed to. You learned to look interested when you were bored. You learned to mask disappointment, fake enthusiasm, conceal anger. Your face is a rehearsed performance. It is the part of your body closest to your conscious brain, the part most under direct cortical control, which means it is the part most easily manipulated. Now think about your feet. When was the last time you consciously thought about what your feet were doing? You never think about your feet. Nobody does. And that is precisely why your feet are the most honest part of your body. The limbic system drives foot behavior because feet evolved for survival. They are your escape mechanism. When a threat appears, your feet prepare to run before your conscious mind even registers the danger. So your feet reveal what your mouth would never dare to say. There is what I call the honesty gradient, and it runs from the bottom of the body to the top. Feet and legs are the most honest. Then the torso and hips. Then arms and hands. Then shoulders and neck. And finally, the face, the least honest. The further a body part is from the brain's conscious control, the more truthful its signals. The closer it is, the more it can be faked. So here is what you do. When you walk into a room, when you sit down across from someone, before you listen to a single word they say, look down. Where are their feet pointed? Feet pointed toward you means genuine interest. Feet pointed toward the door means they want to leave. Feet pointed toward someone else means their attention is elsewhere, no matter what their mouth is telling you. When someone is sitting and their feet are pulled back under their chair, they are disengaging. When their feet are planted forward and pointed at you, they are locked in. When someone suddenly shifts their feet away from you mid-conversation, something you just said triggered a flight response. They may nod, they may smile, they may agree verbally, but their feet just told you the truth. They want out. And here is where most people fail. They look at the smiling face and believe the performance. They ignore the feet that are screaming for the exit. You will not make that mistake again. From this moment forward, you read from the ground up. Feet first, face last. You let the honest parts of the body tell you what the dishonest parts are trying to hide. 2. Establish the baseline, then hunt for the break. Here is where most people who try to read body language go catastrophically wrong. They learn that crossed arms mean defensiveness. They learn that eye contact means confidence. They learn that fidgeting means nervousness. And then they walk into a conversation, see someone cross their arms, and immediately conclude that person is defensive. That is amateur hour. That is how you misread people and make terrible decisions based on false signals. Because here is the truth. Some people cross their arms because they are cold. Some people cross their arms because that is how they have always sat. Some people cross their arms because the chair does not have armrests. A single behavior means nothing without context. Nothing. Before you can read anyone, you must establish their baseline. Their baseline is how they behave when they are comfortable, relaxed, and unthreatened. You need to observe them in a neutral state before you can interpret any deviation. Watch them when the conversation is light. How much do they gesture? How loud is their voice? How often do they make eye contact? Do they fidget naturally? Are they still? Do they lean forward or sit back? Every person has a behavioral default, a way of occupying space when nothing is at stake. That is your baseline. And only deviations from that baseline carry meaning. If someone is naturally animated and suddenly goes still, that is a signal. If someone is naturally still and suddenly starts touching their neck, that is a signal. If someone maintains steady eye contact throughout a conversation and then their gaze shifts to the upper right the moment you ask a specific question, that is a signal. The behavior itself is not the message. The change is the message. A sudden shift from baseline means something specific just triggered a limbic response. Something you said, something you did, something that entered the space. Your job is to identify the trigger. What was the topic? What was the question? What was the word that caused the shift? When you can correlate a behavioral change with a specific trigger, you have just read something the person never intended to reveal. This is how you catch people. Not by cataloging their behaviors in isolation, but by watching for the moment they break character. Because when the limbic system fires, the performance cracks. The mask slips for just a moment. And in that moment, you see the truth. Most people never catch these moments because they are not looking for them. They are too busy preparing their next sentence. They are performing instead of observing. They are talking instead of watching. And the breaks happen fast. A micro shift. A sudden stillness. A hand that was relaxed and suddenly finds its way to the neck. If you are not watching, you miss it. And if you miss it, you are flying blind through an interaction that the other person's body already decoded for you. Establish the baseline. Watch for the break. The break is where the truth lives. 3. Mirror them, and watch them hand you the keys. Now we move from reading to something more active. Something more strategic. Something that feels almost unfair because of how effortlessly it works. Mirroring. Here is the principle. Human beings have a deep, almost desperate need to feel understood. When people feel understood, their defenses drop. When their defenses drop, they talk. And when they talk, they reveal. Mirroring is the art of insinuating similarity by repeating the last 1 to 3 key words of what someone just said. That is it. You do not parrot them. You do not mock them. You simply take the last few words of their statement and repeat them back with a slight upward inflection, as if you are trying to understand. They say, "I am not sure this deal makes sense for us right now." You say, "Makes sense for you right now." And then you go silent. What happens next is almost magical. Because mirroring taps into something primal. The human fear of being different and the corresponding desire to feel aligned. When you mirror someone, their brain registers a signal of similarity. This person gets me. This person is like me. And that signal triggers a bonding response that operates entirely below conscious awareness. They do not realize you are doing it. They just feel comfortable. And comfortable people talk. They elaborate. They explain. They justify. They fill the silence with information they never planned to share. And every word they add is a piece of their hand being revealed. The beauty of mirroring is its simplicity. You do not need to be clever. You do not need to construct elaborate arguments. You just repeat their last few words and shut up. The silence after the mirror is where the power lives. Most people are terrified of silence. It makes them deeply uncomfortable. When you mirror and then go completely silent, the other person feels an almost irresistible urge to fill that void. And they will fill it with the thing they were trying to hide. They will explain their real objection. They will reveal their actual concern. They will disclose their hidden constraint. Not because you asked. Not because you pressured them. Because you created a space where their own discomfort forced them to speak. This is dark psychology at its most elegant. You are not extracting information. You are creating conditions where they volunteer it. You are not interrogating. You are reflecting. And in that reflection, they see themselves, and they cannot help but tell you more. Try this in your next conversation. When someone makes a statement, mirror the last 3 words and say nothing. Watch what happens. Watch them lean in. Watch them explain. Watch them reveal. And watch yourself sit there, perfectly still, perfectly silent, collecting every word like a weapon you will use later. 4. Deploy calibrated silence after a label and let them confess. If mirroring is the setup, silence is the kill shot. But not just any silence. Calibrated silence. Strategic silence. Silence deployed with the precision of a scalpel. Here is how it works. You combine mirroring with something called emotional labeling. An emotional label is when you identify the feeling you sense in the other person and name it out loud. You say something like, "It sounds like you are frustrated with how this has been handled." Or, "It seems like you are worried about the timeline." You are not accusing them. You are not telling them how they feel. You are observing, and you are naming. And then you stop talking. You go silent. What happens next is something I have watched play out hundreds of times. When you label someone's emotion accurately, two things happen simultaneously. First, they feel seen. The limbic system registers the label as recognition, and the threat level drops. Second, they feel compelled to respond. Because a label is not a question, it does not demand an answer, but human beings cannot leave a labeled emotion hanging in the air. They have to address it. They have to correct it, confirm it, or expand on it. And when they do, they reveal. They tell you why they are frustrated. They explain what is really driving the worry. They unpack the emotion and hand you the contents. But only if you stay silent. The moment you label, your job is to close your mouth and let the silence do its work. Most people cannot do this. They label an emotion and then immediately start talking again because the silence makes them uncomfortable. They rush to fill it. And in rushing, they cut off the very confession they were about to receive. You must learn to tolerate the discomfort of silence. You must learn to sit in it, to let it stretch, to let it press against the other person until they crack and speak. The person who can tolerate silence the longest controls the conversation. Let me say that again because it is worth burning into your mind. The person who can tolerate silence the longest controls the conversation. Silence is not empty. Silence is not passive. Silence is a tool. It is pressure. It is a weapon. And when you deploy it after a label, it becomes a confession machine. They will tell you what they plan to conceal because their own discomfort will not let them stay quiet. You did not force them. You did not manipulate them with tricks. You simply created a space, and they filled it with the truth. That is the ruthless art. You set the stage. They deliver the lines. And every word they speak is a card they are turning face up for you. 5. Watch for pacifying behaviors as stress signals. Now we go deeper into the body. Deeper into the limbic system. When people experience stress, discomfort, or the urge to deceive, their brain does something specific. It triggers self-soothing behaviors. Pacifying behaviors. These are unconscious actions designed to calm the nervous system when it detects a threat. And they are everywhere if you know what to look for. Touching or stroking the neck. Rubbing the back of the neck. Touching the face. Stroking hair. Playing with jewelry. Massaging temples. Adjusting a collar. These are not random fidgets. These are the body's built-in tranquilizers. When the limbic system detects a threat, it triggers these behaviors automatically to reduce stress. The person does not know they are doing it. They do not choose to do it. It just happens. And that is what makes pacifying behaviors so incredibly valuable for reading people. They are pure limbic output. Unfiltered. Unconscious. Uncontrollable. Here is how to use them. First, identify which specific pacifying behavior the person uses. Everyone has their preferred self-soothing gesture. Some people always touch their neck. Some people rub their chin. Some people play with their ring. You learn their pacifying pattern the same way you learn their baseline, by observing them in a neutral state. Second, note when pacifying increases. You are watching for a spike. A sudden escalation in self-soothing that breaks from their normal pattern. Third, and this is the critical step, correlate the timing. When did the pacifying spike happen? What was being discussed? What question was asked? What word was spoken? The timing tells you everything. If someone is talking casually and their pacifying behavior is minimal, and then you mention a specific topic and they suddenly start rubbing the back of their neck, that topic just triggered a limbic threat response. Something about that subject caused them discomfort. And they are trying to soothe themselves without even realizing it. Now, here is the key rule. Never rely on pacifying alone. A single pacifying behavior could mean many things. They could be tired. They could have an itch. They could be cold. But when you see pacifying spike in combination with other discomfort signals, when you see the neck touching plus the feet shifting plus the torso turning away plus the voice changing pitch, you have a cluster. And a cluster means you are looking at a limbic response to a specific trigger. 3 or more convergent signals dramatically increase your confidence. You are no longer guessing. You are reading. And what you are reading is the gap between what they are saying and what their body is experiencing. That gap is where the truth lives. When someone says they are fine and their hand is stroking their neck, they are not fine. When someone says they have no concerns and they start playing with their ring, they have concerns. When someone says they agree with the plan and they suddenly touch their face, they do not agree. The mouth says one thing. The body says another. And the body cannot help itself because the limbic system does not negotiate. It reacts. Your job is to watch for the reaction and note what triggered it. That trigger is the pressure point. That trigger is the thing they do not want you to know about. And now you know about it, and they have no idea you know. 6. Identify their ego state and shift the transaction. Now we move from body language to something more psychological. More structural. Because reading people is not just about watching their physical signals. It is about understanding which version of them you are talking to at any given moment. Every person operates from one of 3 ego states: parent, adult, or child. And the state they are in when you interact with them determines everything about how the conversation will go. The parent state is authoritative, judgmental, and driven by rules and standards. When someone is in parent, they are telling you how things should be. They are correcting, instructing, evaluating. The child state is emotional, reactive, and driven by feelings. When someone is in child, they are either adapting to please or rebelling to resist. They are not thinking logically. They are feeling and reacting. The adult state is rational, calm, and present. When someone is an adult, they are processing information objectively, weighing options, and making balanced decisions. Here is what most people never realize. Every interaction is a transaction between ego states. And if you do not know which state the other person is operating from, you are responding blindly. You might bring adult logic to a child emotional outburst and wonder why nothing you say gets through. You might bring child emotion to a parent judgmental critique and wonder why you feel small and defensive. You might bring parent authority to an adult negotiation and wonder why the other person shuts down. The key to controlling any dynamic is to identify the ego state they are in and consciously choose which state you respond from. If they are in child, panicking or emotional or reactive, you do not match them. You respond from adult. Calm, steady, rational. You become the anchor while they thrash. If they are in parent, judging and correcting and dominating, you do not submit and you do not fight. You respond from adult. You acknowledge their perspective without accepting their authority. You redirect the conversation back to facts and options. If they are in adult, you match them. Adult to adult is where real negotiation happens. It is where both parties are rational and engaged. But here is the dark technique. You can also deliberately shift their ego state. If someone is stuck in parent, being rigid and controlling, you can respond from a slightly adaptive child state, not submissive but open, which often draws them out of their judgmental posture because they feel they have been heard. If someone is stuck in child, emotional and overwhelmed, you can respond from nurturing parent, not controlling but supportive, which often helps them settle into adult. You are not just reading their state. You are choosing your state strategically to move them where you need them to be. This is not manipulation in the crude sense. This is structural awareness. This is understanding that human interactions are not flat, linear exchanges. They are dynamic shifts between different versions of the same person. And the person who understands which version is active, and which version they should deploy in response, controls the entire emotional architecture of the interaction. Most people do not even know these states exist. They just react. They feel attacked, so they defend. They feel judged, so they argue. They feel overwhelmed, so they shut down. They are passengers in their own interactions. You are about to become the driver. 7. Trust the body, never the words. The 738-55 rule. Here is the framework that ties everything together. When you are assessing whether someone is being honest, fully engaged, or telling you the complete truth, the words they speak account for approximately 7% of the communication. Their tone of voice accounts for 38%. And their body language accounts for 55%. Let that sink in. The words, the thing most people listen to almost exclusively, carry the least amount of truthful information. The words are 7%. 7. The tone is 38%. The body is 55%. Which means if you are only listening to what someone says, you are ignoring 93% of the signal. You are operating with less than a tenth of the available data. And the data you are ignoring is the data that actually matters. Here is how to use this. When the words, the tone, and the body language are all aligned, when someone says they are excited and their voice carries energy and their body is open and forward and animated, you can be reasonably confident they mean it. But when the words say one thing and the tone or body says another, something is off. And you trust the nonverbal signals. Always. If someone says they are happy with the arrangement but their voice is flat and their feet are pointed at the door, they are not happy. If someone says they agree with your proposal but they lean back and cross their arms and their pacifying behavior spikes, they do not agree. If someone says they have nothing to hide but they suddenly go still and their breathing changes and they start touching their neck, they have plenty to hide. The words are the performance. The tone and the body are the reality. And there is something else you should know about words specifically. People who are lying tend to use more of them. A truthful person speaks simply. They say what happened and they stop. The average truthful statement is about 13 words. But a liar builds fortifications out of language. They use more words. They construct more complex sentences. They add unnecessary detail to make their story sound more convincing. They over-explain because they are trying to manage your perception. They are trying to anticipate every doubt and close every gap. And in doing so, they reveal themselves. Because truth does not need a fortress. Truth is simple. It is deception that builds elaborate structures. So when someone gives you an answer that is suspiciously detailed, suspiciously long, suspiciously well-constructed, your alarm should sound. Not because detail always means lies, but because excessive detail, detail that goes beyond what was asked, detail that feels rehearsed, that is the neocortex working overtime to cover for the limbic system's discomfort. The words are too many. The body is too still. The tone is too controlled. And you, now trained to read all three channels simultaneously, see the mismatch that everyone else misses. Now let me tie this together, because these 7 techniques are not isolated tricks. They form a system. A complete framework for reading human beings with a clarity that most people will never achieve in their lifetimes. You start by reading from the feet up, because the feet are the most honest part of the body and the face is the least. You establish a baseline so you can detect the moment someone breaks character, because the break is where the truth leaks. You mirror their words to make them feel understood, because understood people drop their guard and fill silence with revelation. You deploy calibrated silence after emotional labels, because silence is pressure, and pressure extracts confessions that questions never could. You watch for pacifying behaviors as stress signals, because the limbic system soothes itself without permission, and those self-soothing gestures mark the exact moments where discomfort was triggered. You identify which ego state they are operating from, parent, adult, or child, and you shift the transaction to control the dynamic, because most people do not even know they are switching between versions of themselves. And you trust the body over the words, because words are 7% of the signal and the body is 55%, and anyone who listens only to words is flying blind. When you stack these techniques together, something happens to you. Something shifts at a fundamental level. You stop taking people at their word. Not because you become cynical. Because you become accurate. You stop being surprised by betrayals because you saw the signals weeks before the betrayal arrived. You stop being manipulated because you can read the manipulation in real time, in the body, in the tone, in the gaps between what is said and what is meant. You stop being the person who gets played. And you start being the person who sees. There is a cost to this, and I want you to hear it clearly. When you learn to read people this accurately, you cannot unsee it. You will see the micro-expressions of contempt that flash across a friend's face. You will notice the feet shifting away when you share something vulnerable. You will catch the pacifying behavior when someone you trust is being less than honest. You will see people as they are, not as they present themselves. And that can be lonely. But loneliness is a small price to pay for clarity. And clarity is a small price to pay for power. Because the alternative is what you have been doing. Believing the performance. Trusting the mask. Taking the words at face value while the body screams the truth. How has that been working for you? How many times have you been blindsided by someone who was telling you who they were the entire time? How many relationships have you stayed in past the expiration date because you listened to the words instead of watching the body? How many deals have you lost because you were performing instead of observing? The pattern has been costing you. It has been costing you time. It has been costing you trust. It has been costing you opportunities you did not even know you missed. Every conversation where you were too busy talking to notice their feet shifting away. Every negotiation where you were so focused on your next argument that you missed their pacifying behavior spiking when you named your price. Every interaction where you trusted the smile and ignored the everything else. Those were moments where their hand was showing, and you folded instead of reading. Machiavelli understood that power is not about force. It is about perception. It is about seeing what others miss. It is about knowing the truth while everyone else believes the performance. The ruthless art Machiavelli perfected was not cruelty. It was clarity. It was the ability to see through the mask to the reality beneath, and to act on that reality while everyone else was still reacting to the illusion. The mouth always lies. The body always confesses. And now you know how to read the confession. So here is what I want you to do. Right now, not tomorrow. Not next week. Not when you feel ready. Right now. Start paying attention to feet. Start watching for baseline breaks. Start mirroring and going silent. Start labeling emotions and sitting in the discomfort of the pause. Start reading the body instead of the words. Start seeing what has been in front of you this entire time. And the next time you sit across from someone, do not perform. Do not fill every silence. Do not rush to respond. Watch. Listen. Read. Let them talk. Let them reveal. And let their body tell you everything their mouth would never dare to say. The people around you have been showing you their hand your entire life. You just kept missing it. Not anymore. Go to the comments right now and type these words. I am untouchable. Not because you are invulnerable. But because you see. And the person who sees can never be fully played. The mouth always lies. The body always confesses. The ruthless art Machiavelli perfected. Now it is yours.